Okay. Yeah, glad to be able to present first results of the study here, Public Acceptance of Agricultural Robots. That is an open call project that we started in mid-2022. So it's not yet very old, 1.5 years. And this is research work that primarily Hendrik Zedis, a doctoral student of mine, integrated into FENEROP, is doing together with me. And we have given it the general title, Public Acceptance of Agricultural Robots. The question that one may ask, of course, is why do public perceptions matter? I mean, the general traditional development of technology in agriculture and also in other sectors has been science develops something, and that's either useful or not. If it's useful, it's going to be used, and that's what's determining the speed of innovation. But that is a model that maybe doesn't hold these days anymore. I mean, we're looking at transformative or potentially transformative technology where we know from other examples, and I'll give you an example in a second, that the speed of what's happening in terms of transformative technologies doesn't depend on science alone, but it also depends on what society wants, what's acceptable for society, and that, of course, depends a lot on what type of information and perceptions do people have. And this is probably even more the case for agricultural and food technologies than for many other technologies. First thing is that, especially in the European context, many people don't necessarily see the need for further agricultural technology. There's this widespread notion that we have enough production, perhaps even too much production. We have a lot of waste, and all of these are problems. So why would we need technologies that help us to increase productivity? That is something that's, as a basic, first of all, there, at least in the European context, and then you have feelings about safety of technologies, naturalness, social fairness, and the question is, is something like this that looks familiar to us, but is this actually well aligned with the widespread paradigm for naturalness in food? We simply don't know, right? And that's what we want to better understand. And I think in general that understanding perceptions and also possible concerns is important for maybe adjusting technological details, but also for science communication that is effective in terms of getting objective information out, but also in a way that's addressing possible broader social concerns. And I want to give you a little bit of historical background why I am particularly interested in this question. I'm an agricultural economist who has for a long time worked around economic and social and institutional and political questions of genetically modified organisms in agriculture. And some of you are perhaps familiar with GMOs and the broader debate and history, others perhaps not. I mean, GMOs were first commercialized in the mid-1990s. And that was happening in North America and then in a few other countries. And of course, I mean, GMOs have the potential to increase food production, make farming more sustainable. So in principle, you can say, the potentials are perhaps similar to what we see in digital technologies, is true for genetic technologies, of course, with very different mechanisms, but the broader story is perhaps not so different. But from the start, there were fears about risks, fears about not only risks in terms of environmental safety and food safety, but also about possible corporate dominance and patents and ownership. And this is something that from the start was actually dominating debate. It was something that was co-created in terms of narratives by environmental NGOs that were and still are pretty much opposed against GMOs. This influenced public perceptions from the start. It influenced the mass media, and the same narratives that were put out at that time back in the 1990s are still the narratives that you're often hearing today, and they're dominating the public debate and the opinion. Now, that's not only a question of public acceptance, but in a democratic society, there are also often regulations, trying to pick up public concerns, and then the public concerns are again formed by regulations, so it can become a spiral of misperceptions, and basically in many parts of the world, especially in Europe, but not only in Europe, we have de facto bans of genetically modified organisms in agriculture. And this, in spite of the fact that we now look back at 30 years of research around risk, environmental safety, food safety, that's clearly suggesting that GMOs are as safe as other crops. But that's not necessarily entering the public and policy debate. We have extremely entrenched public attitudes, obstructing developments in plant biotech. We have colleagues here in Bonn, also in the FINROP cluster, who know what I'm talking about. You can't even get things out into the field for testing them, simply because we have so crazy regulations around GMO. And this is just something where we need to say, well, the last 25 to 30 years were lost, almost lost in terms of moving genomic technologies forward. Many things are happening in the lab, but not in the field. And this is obviously something that we want to avoid. We need to learn from that experience that is clearly related to the fact that back in the 1990s, people were not, also scientists, were not sufficiently thinking about, hey, what is it that we're putting out and how are we communicating that and how are we possibly avoiding misinformation to spread. So here we are, and that's why I think we should be interested in the question of public acceptance, because digital technologies, robotics can certainly be transformative, can revolutionize agriculture if we think of what may be possible in the future. But we cannot do that without also taking society on board. So here are the main research questions that we are addressing in this particular study, which is only a first paper of the broader research. How much do citizens know about digital farming and robots in particular? What attitudes towards farming robots do people have? What possible concerns do they have? And what's influencing these attitudes and concerns? And we were addressing that or those questions through an online survey that is including a framing experiment that I'm going to explain in a second, with a representative sample of German citizens. I want to clarify that we're looking at citizens who are obviously also food consumers, but the food consumer and the citizen perspective is not necessarily exactly the same thing. In social science, we're often talking about the consumer-citizen gap, because what people like as citizens and dislike is not always reflected in terms of what they may be buying in the supermarket. And here we're not interested what they're buying in the supermarket. Here we're interested in their broader citizens' perspective that may be possibly influencing also policy regulations. Now, why Germany? The answer is straightforward, because we're located in Germany and FINROP is located in Germany, but Germany is potentially also an interesting example, because we know that in Germany and German-speaking cultural environments, we often see perceptions that are somewhat more critical with respect to new food and agricultural technologies than in other parts of the world. So let's learn something from Germany that can possibly also tell us interesting lessons beyond the case of Germany. So here is the uh, online survey that we did. We developed a specific questionnaire where questions around how specific should it be in terms of examples. And so you will see that in a minute. We tested that and the survey was run online in early this year with around 2,300 people, citizens in all parts of Germany. This was run together with a panel provider, Respondi AG, and this is with one of the panel providers. There are difference out there. The sample is representative for the German adult population, so above 18 years of age, representative in various socioeconomic characteristics. One may certainly argue, yeah, but if it's online, is it really representative? Not everyone is using the internet. Well, more than 90% of German adults do. And so we do find a lower representation among the very old ones, but here quota sampling was used, so there are sufficient also in terms of over 60 years of age. So we feel that this is really a good and representative sample. The survey structure work like this, and the order of the different things is also important to keep in mind, because certainly otherwise you can get biases and factors that you don't want. We started out with a general intro and the consent to participate. So this is also a study that was approved by the Institutional Review Board. Um, then we started with questions on people's agricultural involvement, people's knowledge about agriculture, general questions around trust and awareness and general perceptions around farming robots. This was before we gave any information about robots. So we wanted to know, what do people know? How do they feel? Then following that, there was information given about three concrete robot applications, short information. I'll show you what we showed people and then told people. After that, we gave more detailed information in three different versions and control that didn't get any further information. And then after that, we were asking more specifically about attitudes towards robots and possible concerns after people had received those different pieces of information. So the first thing we're interested in is the question, have you ever heard or read anything about the use of robots in agriculture? And that is prior to the survey, before we gave any further information. And we may all feel daily thinking about robots in agriculture, that everybody does that or everybody knows around that, knows that. Now it's not moving forward. What's happening here? Hold on a second. Here we are. That's the full sample result, where 51% said no, never heard. And that's interesting. I mean, half of the population has never heard anything about robots in agriculture or read something. Another 13% were unsure. So it's only, about a third of the persons who clearly said yes. That doesn't mean they know a lot. It just means, yes, they have ever thought about that. I've heard, maybe seen a picture or so. And we may be asking ourselves, I'm not sure why my thing is not moving forward here. We may think, okay, are there important differences by age? There are. Younger people are a little bit higher in terms of awareness. One can see that better educated people, those with higher education, have a little bit more awareness. We see that by income, that those with higher incomes have a little bit more awareness. That's all unsurprising. Also unsurprising is that people living in rural areas have a little bit more awareness than people in urban areas. But with these little differences, I think what we can certainly see is that the differences are not huge, and the majority of the German population is not really aware of agriculture robots. And that is important. So that also means they obviously don't know much, and they obviously don't necessarily have extremely strong perception so far. So before we provided uh, detailed information, we wanted to know what they think about agriculture in terms of technical innovations. Yeah, interesting question, right? I mean, how do people think about agriculture? Is this a backward sector? Is it the children's picture book about romantic agriculture? Interesting thing is that actually some consider agriculture outdated, some don't have a clear view, but also quite a few that consider agriculture as modern and rather modern. And even more interesting, we had before providing information a specific question about robots being used in agriculture. How do you feel about that? And we see there is curiousness, there is by the majority of people, can say here 2/3 in the rather positive or very positive. And that's great. That's interesting. So you can say generally there's openness. There are not a priori by the majority of people negative sentiments about robots in agriculture, with some few exceptions, but we're talking about the majority, and that's good. Now, this is where we started to give more information, and we were telling, and people could either read or listen to that, examples of agricultural robots where we were showing different tasks with pictures, and then we're also comparing how it looks like in more conventional forms. So the first example was about fertilizing by a drone. And we didn't give a lot of information, just those pictures with a sentence of this is how it looks like, and this is the conventional comparison. We were giving a second example of here our weeding robot that's being developed in Fenurop, and we're saying, okay, the classical alternative, is the sprayer that's pulled by a tractor. A third example that we gave is related to soil tillage, and we were showing those pictures just in order to make people a little bit familiar what may that mean, robot, right? So this is where the framing experiment started. So those pictures and examples were shown to all. And this is when we divided randomly the sample into 3 groups and gave 3 information treatments with a few more details. And 1 control group that didn't get any further information. The treatment groups we chose to be first, a paragraph emphasizing what that may mean in terms of increasing food supplies. Yeah, emphasizing possible benefits that farming robots may have to sustainably increase food supplies. We call that the food security treatment. A second treatment was not talking about food security, but talking about labor, emphasizing possible benefits that may be there in terms of easing the work, addressing labor shortages that there are in agriculture. A third treatment was around the environment, emphasizing possible environmental benefits in terms of soil compaction, input use, chemicals, enhanced biodiversity. So either or. People received not all 3, but either or, and then there's the control group. And one may now argue, okay, maybe it would have been interesting to also have a negative treatment by giving some, creating some concerns or so. We thought about that and decided not to do it because this is a larger scale survey. We didn't want to put out, any really negative narratives. We decided not to do that. It would have been interesting, but we refrained from doing so. And Now, what is it that we want to test? We want to test to what extent the different pieces of information may affect people's attitudes. And we measured attitudes towards robots with two different approaches. One is what in the social science literature is called the ABC model, that stands for affection, behavior, and cognition. That's a complex statistical way of asking a battery of questions from different angles and trying to get to what people feel. The second approach is a direct question about people's attitudes. And both approaches show very similar results in terms of qualitative results, and therefore I'm only showing you one, namely the direct question approach. Should robots, as you've just seen, be used in farming? And people could respond on a 5-point Likert scale from definitely not over definitely yes, and 3 is the middle point, so that's the indifferent. And now in the control group, those that only saw the pictures but without any information treatment, we get a mean response of 3.86. So that means more on the positive side, right? So 3 is the neutral indifferent side, more on the positive side. And now we want to know, okay, what effect did the information treatments have? And this is something where we ran ordered probit models. We need to understand the outcome of an ordered probit model is an odds ratio. And the odds ratio, if it's bigger than 1, that it increases the likelihood of more positive responses. If you look at this point estimate here, which is 1.82, this is telling us that those people who receive the environmental treatment, information treatment, are 82% more likely to have 1 unit higher response in terms of positive attitude. So a strong effect. It's a really strong effect, and we see that it's stronger than for labor and food security. But even here, we see relatively strong effects. So what we learn is that, yes, definitely additional information changes attitudes. We gave positive information, it changed attitudes significantly and with a sizable amount towards positive. Now, I could imagine that with a negative effect, we would also see, the opposite, and that makes it interesting because we're looking at people who don't know much, and there is a risk out of spreading misinformation. Now, information matters and framing matters. That's clearly coming out here. There are a couple of other interesting results. This is looking for other factors that influence people's attitudes. Down here, you see what we already know. This is the 3 information treatments, but then we are interested in a couple of other socioeconomic characteristics. We see that higher income people, high and middle, where the reference is the low income people, have definitely more positive attitudes. Higher education matters. The interesting thing is knowledge, and this is referring to knowledge about farming and agriculture. We asked people, how would you assess your knowledge? This is the perceived knowledge, and this is, having rather negative effect on farming, but the true knowledge which we assessed with a quiz around questions related to agriculture, the more knowledge they have, the more positive the attitudes. Urban and males have more positive attitudes. This is also quite interesting because this is people who are telling us that their organic consumers are not necessarily the same as people who are telling us to be climate conscious consumers. So organic doesn't have any significant effect. Climate conscious does seem to be associated with more positive responses. Trust in farmers, that's also interesting. So one can certainly use that information to target people and information pieces. We were then interested to learn a bit more about possible concerns about robots, and we were asking people, we were defining from our side possible areas of concerns. Are people feeling and concerned about robots being unnatural? interestingly, most people are not. There are only 6% that are in any way concerned about robots being unnatural, and 74 not at all, and a few not sure. Also, there's no scariness, there's no unethicalness, and that's already very positive, I would say, for saying, well, it could be well received. There are a couple of other things where concerns are a little bit bigger. Data insecurity, cybercrime, there are some concerns around that, and that's something to keep in mind. There are also some concerns around job cuts, rural depopulation. I mean, we had that labor treatment, and of course, we need to see that in the last 2 years, we have been, post-corona in a situation where finding labor in all sectors is basically difficult. It's a relatively new situation for many, so there's still that mixed perception of, well, may jobs be lost, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, but people's perceptions are kind of mixed here. Where more concerns are is rising food prices. I mean, the argument is that maybe these robots are expensive and that's increasing the prices of food. That's not necessarily likely to happen, because if these are really expensive, then farmers wouldn't adopt them. So it's something that citizens may be concerned about, but which is not really likely to happen. But lack of human control, that's a feeling that many people are concerned about, half, and another one third that are potentially or not sure. So there is some uneasiness around not necessarily a robot doing a particular task, but if humans lose control about farming altogether, and that's being done something by artificial intelligence, I think that's still something that many people are not yet really fully in favor of. So let me come to a few conclusions. First of all, public awareness is low, less than 40%. And of course, if we go to other parts of the world, we don't know, but there may be many parts of the world where it's still much lower. But people are generally curious and open. About 2/3 that have a more positive than negative view. We saw that there are a couple of factors that play a role here in influencing attitudes. There are known widespread feelings about unnaturalness, unethicalness. And I think if you look at the GMO debate, the notions about unnaturalness are really extremely critical in driving people's negative perceptions. So here we have a field with robots where this is not a priori seeming to be a concern, but there is concerns about lack of human control, possible cybercrime. We saw very clearly strong effects of framing those information frames. In our case, this was positive, and it was more positive for environmental narratives than for social, labor, food security narratives. That's also interesting. It's the environmental thing that seems to matter most here in this connection. But we have to be aware that possibly negative frames could also play a role. And the information we are creating here, if this is misused and people know that, well, it's cybercrime and lack of human control that people are concerned around, one could easily create narratives that may lead to negative acceptance rate. So we believe that those insights can be used for developing science communication strategies, and we feel that the generally positive attitudes are something we can be quite happy about. That may be true even more so in other places beyond Germany, where perhaps views are not so critical. But one of the main points is let's not be naive. I mean, narratives can be created, and I think narratives should be created based on science and not based on perceptions by some groups and people who may be opposing digital forms of agriculture. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to the discussion.